Well, welcome everyone to our Savior Lutheran Church weekly lectionary-based Bible study. We are studying this week for the 23rd Sunday after Pentecost. The readings are Amos 5:18 through 24, Psalm 70, 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through 18, and Matthew 25, 1 to 13. So as is our practice, we have already read through all four of the passages and had some kind of primer discussion on them. And now I'd just like to share with you this recording of our process of disciple. Now I'm going to blank on the name of it. A lectio-based way of studying scripture. So we'll read through one of the passages 3 times. Today we've chosen Psalm 70 to read through in the gospel-based discipleship approach. There we go, we finally came. And so as we read the first time, Joanne's going to read for us. Give us a wave, Joanne. Hi. And as we read through Psalm 70, just listen for a word, a phrase, or an image that the Spirit is stirring up in you and bringing to your attention that feels like good news, that feels like good food, that feels like shelter, feels like something that you would run towards. And so I'll ask Joanne to read, and I'll just begin with the prayer of the day for this coming Sunday. The Lord be with you. O God of justice and love, you illumine our way through life with the words of your Son. Give us the light we need and awaken us to the needs of others. Through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen. Right, John?
All right. Rescue me, O God. Lord, hurry to my aid. They are after my life and delight in hurting me. Confuse them, shame them, stop them. Don't let them keep on mocking me, but fill the followers of God with joy. Let those who love your salvation exclaim, what a wonderful God he is. But I am in deep trouble. Rush to my aid, for only you can help and save me, O Lord. Don't delay.
Is there a word or a phrase and image there that evokes a response in you today?
I like passage 4, where it says, but fill the followers of God with joy. Let those who love your salvation exclaim, what a wonderful God he is. It just makes me happy inside. Just joyful. To be filled with him and his love. There's no voids when he fills you. And today, verse 5 is speaking to me today, very strongly.
Yeah.
But I do like the 4th one also. I mean, the whole psalm is so good.
I think I feel like my reaction to this psalm is kind of like a I don't know how to describe it.
Like this, if I may interrupt for a minute, this just didn't sit very well with me. Give them a taste of their own medicine, those gossips off plucking their tongues. Because it's like, God is supposed to be gentle and kind. I know that he's also an angry God, but that is vengeful. And it's like, that's not cool.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. It's like, it feels sort of like what's it called? They say public displays of affection, like when you see two people in a public place that are kind of all over each other and you're
It's
just
too
like,
much. And you're
yeah.
like,
It's like,
You
get a
know?
room.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
get-
kind of the way I react to this song. It's just like a little too much information. Like it's a little too raw.
But isn't that
Kind
how
of word.
David is though?
I don't know. That's just how I'm
Not
reacting to it
always.
today. But
Like mostly he's very gracious, I find, but this,
I-
like this first verse is just,
No, I find that David, when he's down.
and I think I think that's something that's important to lift up in this way of reading and studying.
no,
is
no. But it
people
just-
can have different responses.
Yeah.
Like what the Spirit is working on in you and in me might be different in this same passage today, right? So we can attend to that. So the question isn't here so much about like, can we come to a common understanding as just pay attention to how God is speaking to you. Because this first step is as much about figuring out where we're at coming into the text as it is what God is saying or speaking to us. And it's, yeah, for me, I think right today, I'm just coming at it from a place of feeling like these things that are raw and, I don't know, rough and that they don't belong to God, that those are things you shouldn't take to God or should hide from God or whatever. That's just kind of part of where I'm coming at it. And maybe God has something to say about that. Go
I
ahead.
kind of see another side of the coin. Yeah, if you read it one way, it sounds like you're asking God to be vengeful. But you could flip the coin the other way, and it could be read as you're asking him to stand up for you and protect you. And, don't let these guys kill me, stand up for me. So I kind of see it. You could read it both ways.
I think they're both in there. Like, the first part is that wickedness and that meanness that's really unnecessary.
Yeah.
But the last part is like, quick to my rescue, God, don't lose a minute. Like, be there with me, rescue me, because he holds us. But I was happy with running. Now he's gonna hold me again.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. Yeah, it's that. Absolutely. Yeah. It's the good news is always also bad news.
Sometimes.
Not sometimes, every time, because the good news of Jesus Christ is come and die.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I have new and abundant life for you. The hitch is you got to die to sin, selfishness, the devil, the ways of the world.
Yeah,
It's like,
how much brokenheartedness does he need to see? Like, gosh, how much death, how much, it's just so sad.
yeah.
And I know some people that don't know. If it's sad for us, I can only imagine, like for my daughter, who doesn't know him.
Maybe she knows him.
Carol, do you have anything that you wanted to share?
No, just listening to everybody's view.
Making sure everybody gets a chance. Okay, so let's go on to the second time through. Just to clarify, Joanne, did you say the translation that you had?
Yeah, the Living Bible.
Okay,
Yeah.
Living Bible, good. So I'll read a second time through from the New Revised Standard Version. And so this time through, we're wondering, what is the word of freedom, the word of rescue, the word of resurrection that God is speaking to you into your life and into the world through you, through this passage today. Be pleased, O God, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me. Let those be put to shame and confusion who seek my life. Let those be turned back and brought to dishonor who desire to hurt me. Let those who say, aha, aha, turn back because of their shame. Let all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. Let those who love your salvation say evermore, God is great. But I am poor and needy. Hasten to me, O God. You are my help and my deliverer. O Lord, do not delay. Any sense of how God is for you in this passage today? It makes me think of, I think it's called Maslow's pyramid or hierarchy of needs, where it's like at the very top is sort of a well-differentiated, well-adjusted person who has kind of had their psychological needs met. But as you go down the pyramid, the base of the pyramid is actually built of like very basic things that everybody needs. And you can't actually get to that pinnacle of human development if you are hungry and if you have no like friends. And if your health is eroded, it's really hard. Like we have these basic needs that need to be met before we can sort of rise developmentally speaking to another level, right? So this is one way of thinking about why the cycle of poverty is a real thing, is because if you're stuck constantly hungry or lacking for real physical needs, it becomes really hard to move to another level of human development. I just hear that a little bit in the song, coming back to the basics. But there also seems like there's a good news in that to say, like, that might be the way of the world, but our God is a God who rescues the poor and the needy and the slave and the... I don't know how to put it into flowery language, but I just feel like the good news for me is an assurance that it's like, I love the raw and the rough spots, you don't have to have it all together to come to me. And that confession is just so raw, it's so real. I am poor and needy. I don't need you next Thursday. I need you now.
I mean, there's different kinds of poorness, though, and different kinds of neediness, right? Like, you can be a person that has not much money, but still be so blessed. Mm-hmm. But you might, like I have that spiritual need, right? To be here in person. That's really important to me. Yep. So in that respect, that helps me to grow. And it's been a long time coming, but I mean, again, it doesn't make it easy. There are people that are going through much worse things, but there's different ways of saying how you're rich and how you're not, or how you're poor and how you're not. Just a little bit of food for thought.
But I think that there's this is some of what I'm getting at. And Paul talks about this in Philippians. If there was ever anyone that could have made a case to have it all together and be unto themselves, it would be Jesus. But he did not choose that path. Rather, he chose to lay everything down, every privilege and power, and to take up the position of a slave. And it's to me, that's God saying, and somewhat here in the psalm, saying like, there's something in our broken humanity that wants to not need, like that wants to, but we are needy, like we are needy of, it's like we're created with a hole that only God can fill in our hearts, right? And at once we long for that hole to be fulfilled, and at the same time we're like standing guard over it, ready to punch anyone who gets too close to filling it. Like it's. It just seems in a day, on a day like today, Tuesday, November the 4th,
Wednesday?
This is Wednesday. Tuesday, I'm traumatized. Like
You were confusing me for a minute there.
And in the midst of COVID, it's like, I wonder how much of our problems are based on this need that we think we have to like know and control. And yeah, and those are all normal things, but the assurance is not that we will know, it's that God is here and God will see us through. And that we can cry out to God in our unknowing and in our loneliness and in our frustration and in our sickness and in our brokenness and in our shame. Like we can, that's the permission I hear in the psalm too, that feels on the face of it a little like too much information. Like, oh, that wasn't a very nice prayer, right? You must not be a very good Jew or Christian praying for that clucking person to get theirs. It's like, yeah, we actually have a freedom to talk to God. I mean, God knows our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we hiding from God?
Exactly.
Right? If we say it out loud, it's like a confession at least, right? Okay, it might not be pretty, God, but this is where I'm at.
Well, and I think too, what I hear, I'm not sure, but when you read Psalms like this, I think it's important for us to remember it's okay to take it to God, but be careful who else you take it to.
Say more about that.
Well, I can, let's say I'm having an issue with Mike. I could take it to Rosemary, who might feel sorry for me, you know, and come into it with me, but, oh, poor Joanne, but is that going to help me at all? No, and it's going to harm Mike in the long run. But if I take it to God, who already knows, he can actually do something about it. Like with Mike doing his drinking and not wanting to quit for all those years, 3 years, and me not do anything. And yes, I did talk to other people, which I shouldn't have, maybe, but I have to vent too, I guess.
Did you talk to him?
Oh, of course, but he got mad because he would quit when he was getting ready.
Well,
But then look at
so
March.
some of what I hear you reporting is like wisdom gained through that experience of like,
I think so.
look, I've tried it this way, I've tried it this way, and what I've learned is that the freedom of bringing it to God is that I get some of the help that I need, and God's able to work in that situation
And did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been 7 months or.
that's really incredible.
And that's something I could not have done. It's something that Rosemary couldn't do
Right.
from me complaining at her. It's something that only God could do, and it's okay to take it to him with real rawness and real emotion. Because it hurts. It hurt to watch him drink.
Yeah.
But it's nice now. And it didn't solve all the problems, but it's a huge weight off my shoulders. Huge.
Yeah, and one of the inconvenient truths of those kind of raw prayers, taking them to God, is that God will hear us and act on our behalf, but also God will usually show us something in us that needs to change too.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like praying for your enemies. A lot of times what someone else is doing that's bothering you is something that you do yourself.
Yeah.
And just seeing it on someone else makes you, somehow reflects it back to you like a mirror.
Yeah, you remember when I came in today, I kind of half jokingly, but also seriously said, like, I'm declaring an embargo on any U.S. election talk
Oh,
today.
yes.
That's in large part because I'm finding it very hard to speak about people who, just to be crass about it, I would call my political enemies in ways that are charitable. And I'm finding it, I guess the struggle is that God's putting it on my heart that, like, these are human beings. These are my children. You be careful how you talk about them, because there's a cost to dehumanizing each other, right? And so I'm just leaning way into that wisdom that you're dropping on us to say, like, take it to God, but be careful. Let's take two. So that's what God's saying to me in this is, Phil, it's okay for you to rant and rave to me about whoever, right? I'll listen. And you don't have to be ashamed about how you feel. But
something I read yesterday, which I thought was pretty neat, is that they said that if you're on one side of the fence, always remember that God is on the other side as well.
Yeah.
I thought, oh crap, now I gotta think that too.
Yeah. Amen.
You know, but it's true. He loves us all, and he's on both sides of the fence. It doesn't matter which side you're on. He's on both sides, right? And we're all his children.
And like one of the theologians who's really influenced me a lot is Pastor David Losa, and he would say, I think helpfully, God loves all God's children the same. But when God's children are fighting, God is always going to come to the rescue of the kid who's getting whacked, right? Mm-hmm. Like we do as parents, right? Yes. Like you're going to err on the side of like stopping the teasing or the hitting or whatever, right? And so there's room there for us to say as followers of God, hey, you're not allowed to sit there and say, aha, aha, or cluck your tongue at people. Like, that's wrong, right? Without setting ourselves up to be like the final judge about that person or whatever, right? And so like we hold some power to be, to really proclaim what God's vision is for the people of God. But always humbly and loosely in the sense that we know that we're not perfect and we're implicated in some of the very things that we're going to speak out against. But because to go the other way and just be silent because we know we're not perfect, that leaves some people constantly taking the brunt of things, and that's not really needed. And that's, I think, what the prophets and Jesus, what gets them killed is they refuse to stay silent, and they speak up for the people that are getting ground down. That's not always received well. Yeah. Anybody that hasn't had a chance to share yet? Okay, so I'll call on Rose to read a third time. And Rose, are you reading from
The message.
the message? He's gonna give us a wave, Rose, so that we can see who we are. Yeah, and so this third time, to the extent that you've heard some good news or some encouragement from God about who you are and who God is for you, how is God inviting you to respond to this good news today?
A David prayer. God, please hurry to my rescue. God, come quickly to my aid. Those who are out to get me, let them fall all over themselves. Those who relish my downfall, send them down a blind alley. Give them a taste of their own medicine, those gossips off clucking their tongues. Let those on the hunt for you sing and celebrate. Let all who love your saving way say over and over, God is mighty. But I've lost it. I'm wasted. God, quickly, quickly, quick to my side, quick to my rescue. God, don't lose a minute.
It doesn't feel good to need to say, God, I need you right now. But it does feel good to know I can. And that I stand in a long tradition of people who have prayed that and who will also testify, and the Psalms do this really well. I have cried out and you came, right? Because that's our dread as people, is that we'll cry out and nothing will happen. And then we will truly be alone and forsaken. But the witness of the Bible, maybe more than anything else, is that the people of God have cried out, and God has heard, and God has answered and delivered.
Mine has a little note for the theme. It says an urgent prayer for help. It can be your prayer when you're short on time and long on need.
How true. Funny, that's what I got for question 2 was, I am your deliverer. I am your refuge, your strength.
So what's one small way that God's inviting you to step into that truth?
To give me the strength to be there for those around me that I know and love that need money. Even just for me to be there, to listen, but to not let it bring me down to that. Because that's, God is saying to me, I have to take care of my own emotional levels to be able to do that with others.
Is there, you don't have to name a person, but I'm curious if there's sort of like a face that comes to mind, or a name that comes to mind, or somebody that you just feel like, oh yeah, that's somebody that this applies to this week, or that can work on this thing. Yeah. That's, I find that's always encouraging when, it's a bit of a hope moment, right? But it's encouraging to know you're on the right track with the good news if you feel like, oh yeah, and I see this is where I can apply it this week, or where I'm being kind of like invited or dared to apply it this week. Any other takers on that third person?
I found humor in the part where it says, those gossips off clucking their tongues. Well, doesn't that make you a gossip if you're gossiping about the gossips? But I guess God doesn't look at it that way, but you're probably going to, because it is sin.
Yeah, you all know me, and know that I've praying for healing specifically doesn't come easily to me. I'm way more likely and comfortable to pray for God's will to be done in some general way, right? And some of that is just not wanting to expose myself as needy to God, and not wanting to go to that place of dread of what if I pray for this and nothing happens? What does that mean? But I've learned a lot from a lot of people in this room and others to be bolder about praying for those kinds of healing. And I just wonder, it occurs to me today that one way God might be inviting me to apply some of that knowledge is also in prayers for like deliverance from, pardon my French, but bad shit. Like,
Which we're all
like
living in
God,
right now.
you know, I can't think of an example right off the top of my head, but like, yeah, God, like there's this politician out there who's doing a whole bunch of evil garbage, and I mean, it sure looks evil to me anyway, and would you just take care of it, strike him down with lightning, or get him abducted by aliens or something? And to pray that in the spirit of how I've learned to pray, God, I know that you are the source of all healing and wholeness, and there is this cancer that's eating my friend, and would you just take it away? And to be able to pray that and not, I know that just because I say it, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. That also doesn't mean that I shouldn't say it. And then to lean into some of the wisdom that Joanne was sharing earlier too, to say, this can be a conversation between me and God. Right now, it doesn't need to be a conversation between a whole bunch of others.
Talked to Deborah the other day, and she was saying, you know what? She says, now I can see why God let Kelly die early, because had he been in that home now, they couldn't even have gone in to comfort him or themselves, and how terrible that would be to know your own son is dying, and you can't go in and see them and stuff like that. She said, for that part we are grateful, right? And so there are lots of times where God does answer our prayers. Not the way we like lots of times. However, sometimes it takes a while for it to sink in and really find out why certain things happen and stuff. I just thought that was pretty touching.
What my experience has been is that God always answers prayers. But the most significant sort of answers or results of prayers I've noticed are that my heart changes. Like I receive somehow endurance that I didn't think I had, or compassion that I know I didn't have, or hope that I certainly didn't have. And then once in a while you get to witness a miracle too, and that's awesome.
That is.
And like our friend Bob says, like witnessing those miracles, it increases the hope and the faith of the whole community so that you can pray even more boldly. Right? So
I'm reading a really good book right now. In fact, it's one that I was thinking we should do in our heart. And it's called Comforting Words. And it's to do with prayer and healing and how praying for people has actually worked.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, even just reading this book, how good it is to pray and just something that most of us don't do often enough. But but it's a really, really good book. It's really, really got me reading, and I don't usually read books. I'm not a reader, but yeah, it's a really good book.
it sounds like you got an area where you can press into too.
Yes.
Heidi, you look like you're itching to say something.
No.
Just itchy in general. Is that a good place to end for today? All right, well, let's sign off, and thanks for joining us. If you're joining us on our YouTube channel, drop us a line, send us a comment. We would love to respond to you. And thank you all for joining us here today. Thank you for your faith and your yeah, your willingness to go to vulnerable places and to prayer rugged and rough and vulnerable prayers and share stories with us. It builds the faith of our community, helps us all to see God better. So blessings, God be with you till we meet again.